Hi everyone, welcome back to GE Tutorials. This session is about the history of Canada. Get your pen and notebooks and let's begin. The story of Canada begins long before the arrival of Europeans. Indigenous peoples thrived for thousands of years, developing unique cultures, languages, and traditions. The arrival of European explorers in the late 15th and early 16th centuries forever altered Canadian history. Jacques Cartier, a French explorer, made 3 significant voyages to Canada in the 16th century. His explorations of the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the St. Lawrence River laid the foundation for French claims to the region. In 1534, Cartier claimed the land for France, naming it New France. It was not until 1608 that Samuel de Champlain established the first permanent French settlement at Quebec City. Quebec City became the cornerstone of New France and a center of French culture and influence in North America. This marked a pivotal moment in Canadian history. The 17th and 18th centuries witnessed a fierce rivalry between France and Great Britain for control of North America. This rivalry led to a series of armed conflicts, often involving alliances with indigenous nations, which profoundly shaped the destiny of Canada. One of the most consequential conflicts was the 7 Years' War, which raged from 1756 to 1763. Known in North America as the French and Indian War, it pitted British and French forces against each other. The British victory in the 7 Years' War culminated in the Treaty of Paris, signed in 1763. Under the terms of this treaty, France ceded its Canadian colonies to Great Britain. This marked the end of French rule in Canada and the beginning of British dominance. The British victory had far-reaching consequences for the Indigenous peoples of Canada, as they were now forced to contend with a new colonial power. The British Parliament passed the Quebec Act of 1774, granting religious freedom to Roman Catholics in Quebec, and preserving French civil law. However, it also sparked resentment among some British colonists, contributing to the growing tensions that would eventually erupt into the American Revolution. Following the American Revolution, the British colonies in North America faced new challenges and uncertainties. The specter of American expansionism loomed large, and there were growing concerns about internal divisions and the need for greater autonomy. Confederation was a complex process involving negotiations and compromises between Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and the province of Canada, later divided into Ontario and Quebec. The Fathers of Confederation recognized the need for a united front to address these challenges and secure their future. On July 1, 1867, the British North America Act came into effect, uniting these provinces into a new federal dominion, Canada. This historic event marked the birth of Canada as a nation. The choice of July 1 as the date to celebrate Confederation was deliberate, creating a sense of national unity and identity. Canada Day was intended to be a day of celebration, reflecting on shared history and looking forward to a promising future. The Dominion of Canada remained a self-governing dominion within the British Empire, with its foreign policy still largely controlled by Great Britain. The decades following Confederation were a period of significant growth and transformation for Canada. The country expanded westward, new industries emerged, and the population grew rapidly. Canada's journey toward full independence was gradual, marked by key milestones reflecting its evolving relationship with Great Britain. One such milestone was the Statute of Westminster, passed by the British Parliament in 1931. This act recognized Canada and other self-governing dominions as equal partners in the British Commonwealth of Nations. It granted Canada greater autonomy in its domestic and foreign affairs, although Great Britain retained control over constitutional amendments. Another significant step toward independence came in 1982 with the patriation of the Canadian Constitution. The Constitution Act 1982 brought Canada's constitution home from Britain, ending the need for British involvement in amending Canada's highest law. It also included the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, guaranteeing fundamental rights and freedoms to all Canadians. The history of Canada is inextricably linked to the history of its Indigenous peoples. For millennia, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples thrived in this land, developing distinct cultures, languages, and spiritual beliefs. However, the arrival of Europeans had a profound and often devastating impact on their lives. European colonization brought disease, displacement, and the loss of traditional lands and resources. Government policies aimed at assimilation resulted in the suppression of indigenous languages, cultures, and ways of life. One of the most tragic chapters in this history is the residential school system. For over a century, beginning in the late 19th century, indigenous children were forcibly removed from their families and communities and sent to residential schools. These schools, often run by religious institutions, were designed to assimilate indigenous children into Canadian society. The legacy of residential schools is one of trauma, abuse, and cultural loss. In recent decades, Canada has taken important steps toward reconciliation, acknowledging past wrongs, apologizing for the harms inflicted, and working toward a more just and equitable future.